call our work session to order. Or is this a work session? Yes, it's our work session to order. Jeff, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Councilor Mayton.
Present.
Councilor Smallwood.
Excused for now. She'll be here in a little bit.
Okay, Councilor Sheldon. Here. Councilor Walker. Here. Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here, I'll do a quick review of tonight's agenda before we jump into the work session. Give a chance for council to ask any questions you may have. Jeff, have we had anyone submit anything for public comment yet?
Not today, Mayor.
Okay. We'll go to the, and then do we have any, we don't have response to anything? Nope. Go to the consent agenda, which has our city council meeting minutes from November 6th. I will have an appointment of our library district advisory committee representative, our planning commission appointments, and our business organ funding for Alder Creek water treatment plant improvements and assessment resolution. Moving ahead, we'll move ahead to presentations where we'll have one from Mount Hood Community College on their strategic plan. We'll have the president, Dr. Lisa Scari, as well as Board of Education Director Andrew Spear, and a local, that's a Education Director, Marie Tooney. And a reminder, they are our community college, not Clackamas Community College. We're in the district for Mount Hood. New business, we'll have a public hearing on the temporary extension of the moratorium on the new wastewater connections resolution. And then we'll round off the evening with a report from our city manager and our committee and council reports. With that, let's get into our work session. Welcome, Rochelle. The CCA has been working on some planning for the Sandy Community Campus. And why don't you guys kick us off on our update?
All right, will do. Thank you, Council, Mayor. It's good to be here tonight. So the last time we met and discussed this topic was October 2nd. And we talked a little bit about some of the preliminary visioning that the CCS had conducted. And then we talked about the feasibility study for the annex. And we were using this feasibility study as a way to identify opportunities and constraints around renovating and repurposing the existing facility, the annex. And so just to underscore, we talked about the feasibility study would help us understand and identify how it can better serve the needs of the city, possibly for the next decade into the future. So tonight we have Sean with Polymath with us again. He's going to present 3 ideas that we've talked about: a small, medium, and large idea. And these options will build upon each other. And Sean and his team have created illustrations that show the small, medium, and large, which I think are kind of exciting to see after the visioning. It's neat to see things in the 3D rendering. And then also included tonight in the presentation are some floor plans showing possible arrangements of rooms and estimated square footage. And then just before I hand it over to Sean, I just wanted to make a note real quick of what some of the next steps are following this feasibility study. So there is a Sandy Urban Renewal Retreat on December 2nd, and this is to discuss the strategic direction of the agency, which includes the conversation of the annex building. And then following the SURA retreat, the CCS will meet again December 7th to discuss next steps that reflect how the discussion with the SURA went. And then regarding the final results for the feasibility study, we're still on time to receive those January of 2024. However, depending on the outcome of the SURA meeting, there's other things we could look into, like renovating, further analysis that could be done for more cost refinement, and then digging deeper into analyzing the space and discussing the best possible use for that space. And tonight, Sean will provide a little bit more detail on that conversation. So,
Michelle, if I may kind of jump in for council. So the way we're kind of setting this up is our staff and CCA has worked and done a lot of homework and fact gathering to present to our council. This is just one of the kinds of fact gathering missions that they've been on. They've also done some different appraisals and things on different properties and opportunities throughout the community. You may remember that we had a work session at our previous meeting where we were really talking about kind of the capacity of our urban renewal budget. And so the hope is with that fresh in our mind of what our capacity for our ability to do things and spend, among with some of these different opportunities that we may have in front of us, that we're then going to go into this Urban Renewal Board retreat. And when we get into that retreat, we'll kind of be honing in on a discussion on the presentation that we're about to receive from Rochelle and crew here today. And then based on kind of our decision analysis, we have a couple of different paths we can kind of branch off to, depending on where Urban Renewal Board decides to land on some key questions when we're in that meeting. So I just kind of wanted to set that foundation for you.
Can I add to that foundation?
Please, yeah.
I don't know if either one of you wanted to talk about the why we're doing this.
Yeah, I mean, if
If you want to, that's
I can
great.
jump in and do that now, or you can.
I love the why before we get into the what, you know?
So the quick why, we have 25,000 square feet currently. I don't want to take Sean your thunder or Rochelle's thunder, but we have 25,000 square feet that's really not being utilized in a meaningful way at the bunker. That's no secret right now, right? We've got the Sandy Net administrative offices there, but really the why on this is we have an asset and what can we do with it? Can we, create more usable space for city? Constrained by their own space needs in their existing buildings, is there an opportunity to redevelop this site in a way that provides more park and recreation opportunities, solves different space needs or problems for other departments? And so I think, to your point, Councilor Hoganson, the why is we have a space issue citywide. We have space available. What can we do with that space?
If anything.
What's that?
If anything.
If anything,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I mean, part of that analysis too is this building the right building? And is it, does it actually solve a need, or are we trying to fit a square peg in a round hole? All right.
Yeah.
Analogy, yeah.
I think one of this study is based off that need. We know multiple departments are short of space for this. And we also know that Rochelle has this wonderful vision for parks, parks and recreation and the various activities and programs that could be offered, many of which could have reasonably high cost recovery options associated with them. So all these things, for me, are kind of the why that in my role in the committee, was to kind of push certain, let's look at this, let's see what we can do.
Jump into it. Excited.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean, are you ready to lead us through a presentation?
I am ready. Thank you, Rochelle and Mayor and Council. I've been asked to keep this presentation very brief so that there's time to talk about it and ask questions as a group afterwards. So I'm going to shoot for somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 minutes. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to look at the materials in advance, but I'm basically going to be reviewing the same slides that were sent out, I believe, on Friday. So I'm going to go fast. Please hold your questions to the end if you can, and I'll look forward to them shortly. Okay, we'll start with some site considerations. We'll sort of start at the big scale and then zoom in. This is the site here, the larger plan on the right side of the drawing. The red building is the annex. To the south of the annex, there's about 3 acres worth of space. We sort of have it cartooned out to be a parking lot that would serve the annex, and then future development here in white. Some opportunities include a nice pedestrian way from Pleasant Street all the way to the new park, going around either side of the building potentially. And the building could start to serve as a connection between the park and the rest of the city. It's worth noting that the official plat is quite a bit larger than just the annex building here. It extends into the park a bit, and it's currently zoned R2, residential zone, and it was originally permitted under a conditional use permit. That could theoretically happen again in the next version of the building's life, although in meeting with planning staff, there was a consensus that rezoning the property to a C1 commercial zoning would be good in a few ways. One, it would basically afford more future flexibility in a number of ways in terms of the parking lot that would serve the annex potentially, and also in terms of what could happen with the future development. So as Rochelle mentioned, sorry, trying to get to the next slide here. We've looked at a small, a medium, and a large option. They do build on each other. The Every option would include new building systems. So that's new mechanical systems, new electrical systems, plumbing systems. Sprinklers would likely be added, a new elevator would be added, and as part of the reconfiguring, the whole building would be brought into compliance with the ADA code. So this is a look at the small option. This is the first floor plan. You would enter the south side of the building where the current main entrance is. We are showing several things here. We're showing a reception desk on the left, an elevator right here in this location, some restrooms and services on the right. The stair would remain in its current location in this scenario, although it's currently bounded by full height concrete walls. Those would be cut away so that there could be more visual transparency through the space from north to south. The building's shape, its current configuration of exits, and its structural grid really suggest an east-west corridor through the building. So you'll see that in each of these three options. That just makes a lot of sense from a circulation and an exiting standpoint. And then since the building hasn't quite been programmed yet, we're just talking about programmable space. And so that's what all the orange segments are here. These are rooms that could be used for a variety of purposes, and I'll get into that later in the presentation. But as you can see, there's sort of this big quadrant here, which has about 1,800 square feet worth of space. And then that can be broken down into smaller spaces if we like. Each of these is 600 square feet, or we could have a 1,200 square foot space as well. Moving on to the basement of this level, or sorry, of this option. Pretty similar diagram. The stair would discharge in the middle of the building, opportunity for common lobby space surrounding that. And then again, you can see the distribution of orange program space and the gray space, which would be support space, and the blue restroom space. Even in the most basic option, I think the aesthetic of the building is transformed somewhat significantly. We would propose to add a gable roof across the whole structure. And here we have a modest covered entry at the south main entrance of the building. And then we're proposing to add a lot of new windows. The building is strikingly devoid of windows right now. So actually it's about 70 new windows marching around the building. So here's a view from kind of the north and the east. We've done a little bit kind of bigger glacier move here at the north side of the center of the building off of those lobby spaces, just to promote a visual connection out to the park beyond. And then here's a look inside the building. This is when you step inside the front door. You can see the reception area on the left potentially. This is what the building would look like if its finishes were stripped away. It's got a concrete structure, so the ceiling, the structural ceiling is concrete, series of pan joists and beams. It has this rhythm and concrete columns and a concrete floor as well. But you can see once that stair is modified, a strong visual opportunity to the north and the park beyond presents itself here. And this is looking to the right, we're looking down that main corridor. So you can see this is an example of a program space here, the big white box with the windows above. And again, a view of sort of the lobby opportunity on the left. And then this would be just a raw shell. This is what the raw shell of a program space would look like. This is one of those quadrants I was referencing. So this could get different finished materials, obviously, but this is sort of what's there now. Moving on to the medium option, the biggest change here is that the center of the building gets nicer and more exciting. So we've moved the stair out of the way here. It's now off to the right. As you walk in the door, elevator is immediately to the left. And then the main reception element is sort of right in the middle of the building here with waiting and common area beyond. You can see the configuration of the program space. The orange is pretty similar to the last option. And then in the lower level here, where the stair discharges you in the kind of the bottom middle of the plan here, we have an opportunity for an additional program space here in the top middle of the building, or that could also be an extension of the lobby. Potentially could be doors out to a path that leads you down to the park or something like that. This is sort of just a variant of that basement plan, looking at, well, what if we needed a really big contiguous space? We do have an opportunity to combine halves of the building. So this gets us a space about 4,500 square feet, 4,200 square feet. If there was a need for a really big contiguous office space or anything really, that could be done with really minimal sort of architectural interruption, just a few columns. Bigger changes on the exterior, perhaps. The entry has been sort of amplified, so this is a big covered drop-off area in front of the building. There's also a conditioned entry vestibule at the front of the building here. You can see the window patterning is generally the same, although the big move of the middle of the building is a little bit bigger here, a little bit more glass, a little bit more character to the roof, perhaps. And then really, in my opinion, where it gets special is sort of the feeling of the interior of that space. So it's a taller space. We're illustrating some exposed structure and skylights above to really bring in a lot of light and character into the space. So you can see here, we've just stepped in the front door. Here's the reception desk and then the view out to beyond. This is the main lobby area, sort of looking back towards the main entrance. So an area for check-in desks or wayfinding. Again, this would be highly dependent on how the building is ultimately programmed, but this is sort of where you check into the building and figure out where you're supposed to go. And then this is the lower level looking north here. So again, a big opportunity for a very nice space here with an opportunity to connect out to the park. The large option is perhaps the biggest change. It adds a third floor to the building. So again, building on almost everything from the small and medium. Here the main stair is on the left side. Reception is here immediately as you walk in. Because it is a 3-story space, there's opportunities for multi-story volumes, which is pretty interesting. Here we've taken the liberty of adding a deck off of the main level facing the park, which could be quite nice. And then you see here some stairs. These are stairs coming down from the 3rd floor. So the 3rd floor would need to exit through the 2nd floor. So you see that here and here at the end of the hallway. This is the lower level. So again, program space at all 4 corners, more service kind of stuff in the middle. And then we have sort of an open auditorium element proposed here at the middle of the bottom, and you'll see that pretty soon in 3D as well. This is the upper level. So you can see the stairs at the end of the corridors, a lot of program space, and then these X'd out areas are areas where it's open to below. So that represents kind of a multi-story volume space, like here where the stairs is going through. Here's what it could look like from the exterior. Again, the big covered entry. The request was for a big glassy 3rd floor, so we've got the big glassy 3rd floor, but still trying to bring in some of the elements that are familiar to the Sandy style and the pitched roofs and some wood material, potentially exposed structure, all those good things. Here's a view, that view from the northeast again. You can see the covered deck moment here, and a really good opportunity for expressing some structure here and some aesthetic opportunities. Here's a look inside the front door. So you can see reception on the left. You can see the relocated stair, and you can kind of immediately see that the amount of openness and connection that's possible in this scenario. So again, the covered deck, or the deck is here off in the distance at the park, and there's an opportunity to see up to the upper level, and then off these railings, an opportunity to see down to the lower level too. So really some interesting potential for informal presentation or public gathering down here at the lower level. You can sort of see this walkway out to the deck. And then on the upper level, we have potentially special opportunity for really nice big dramatic rooms, whether this would want to be a community room or new council chambers or what have you, there's really exciting opportunity for some nice spaces up there. It came up in a CCS work session. What would happen if we covered up all of the concrete block that the building's made out of? And so we studied that a little bit. In this scenario, we looked at adding a wood siding on top of all of the concrete block. So this has the same smaller punched windows we've looked at before, the same kind of glassy middle element, but we're getting rid of the concrete block in this rendering. And generally trying to add more elements of the sandy style. So we've added a stone base with sort of emphasis at these columnar elements, which are they're echoing the actual structure of the building inside. That's where the building columns are. That's what you see there. This is a view from the east, kind of showing, varying planes and kind of different applications of a new cladding material. And then this is a view from the south and east here. And then we have a slight variant on this, which is just it's a little bit more contemporary, a little bit glassier, but same basic ideas, a strong stone base, wood as the primary cladding material. And then here we've enlarged the windows a little bit. So it's really getting, quite glassy, and that's good and bad depending on the program, but it was an interesting thing to study. And another view from the east here and from the parking lot. The next thing I want to share is what fits well in this building, in my opinion. What types of spaces would work well? So we looked at a few different possibilities, including office space, meeting space, classroom space, dining space, council chambers, potentially, and auditoriums. So these are all studies just sort of looking at this quadrant of the building, those quadrants of orange space that we saw in the previous plans. So here's an example where we take an entire quadrant and make it an auditorium presentation space. This would fit around 180 people. And again, this is about 1,800 square feet. So this is sort of the biggest you could do with one quadrant. Here on the left, we're taking 2/3 of the quadrant and looking at it as an office space potentially. So we have some open office here with cubicles and then some more private workstations up here, as well as a little breakout area, perhaps a kitchenette, something like that. Even the smallest size room at 600 square feet here is quite generous for a meeting. You could have a meeting where this is showing a setup for 12. I think you could do an even bigger meeting space in there if we wanted to. A couple different things here. On the left, we have a kind of a small open office layout. In the middle, we have a classroom type of space. And then on the right, this is sort of depicting an art studio setup. And so if this were the case, you might put a kitchenette with a sink, clay trap, that sort of thing. On the left here, we have a small auditorium, about 50 people or so. On the right, we have, this is a yoga layout. It would work for a number of different kind of fitness applications. And on the left, we have an auditorium taking up 2/3 of the quadrant, 120 participants perhaps, and then another look at a fitness kind of program here on the right with these are Peloton style exercise bikes. If the whole thing needed to be an office space, this is how you might lay that out. So we've got an open office work area in the middle, meeting room and break room on the right, and then private offices along the top here. This is one look at how a potential council chambers could operate in this environment. And there's a lot of writing on how a council chambers room should be laid out. This is just one of them with where you are all sitting here in the middle and then the public on either side. And then I believe the final ones I have here are dining, so communal dining. So these are 8 tops, for a catered event or something, kind of a banquet setup, which could work well in a rentable program space kind of scenario. And then if we wanted to dial back on the seating itself and include a kitchen element, that's what this depicts here, more of a commercial kitchen that works in conjunction with the dining space. We've been doing some cost projections of these three different options. These continue to evolve. These are working. We're continuing to feed new data in them. For the small option, we're currently thinking that the low side of the estimate would be around 7.5 million. The high side about 9.7. The medium option reconstructs more of the middle of the building, so it's more expensive. On the low side, we think it'd be about 8.5. On the high side, around 11 million. And then adding the third floor does add a lot of cost. So its low range is almost 15 million, and its high range is a little over 13. If we were to stick with the medium option and explore some of those extra aesthetic facade changes, we think that the first one I showed you with the smaller windows but the all-new siding, that might add about $300,000 to $400,000 to the equation. And then if we're interested in enlarging those windows and making the building a bit classier, it would probably add about $500,000 to $600,000 to these high-low totals. So I think that's all I wanted to present, and I think that's all I should present. Unless, Rochelle, you can think of anything else, might be a good time to open it up to discussion, questions?
Questions? Just if you guys were running around with Sarah, and I was curious what that back room at the library is space-wise, just so I could picture it. What was it, 720 square feet about? So, just to compare to some of those 600 square feet rooms, gives you a little bit of visualization. Questions or comments coming after this? Yeah.
Several things. Having pulled out of it, I'm a little bit in the dark of some of the things. One of the questions I had was, I think I remember 70 some odd windows being put into the existing structure. We're talking about a 50, 60, 70-year-old building. Have you had a chance to evaluate the structural concerns about having so many holes permeated through the building, and especially as you get to the third level? I mean, is it feasible? Don't want an evaluation or engineering report. It just seems like a lot of windows.
Yeah, that's fair. It is a lot of windows. And I should have mentioned that a seismic upgrade would be part of every option. It would need to be by code because the building was built in an era of different building codes. There are basically three different ways we could do the seismic upgrade with that many windows. One of them would be to on some walls do an extra layer of concrete. Shotcrete is what it's called, but they basically spray concrete on top of rebar that has been put up against the exterior walls, and then that creates shear walls, and really lateral resistance is where the building would be deficient in that side to side wind earthquake kind of movement. So shear walls are the way to address that. So some extra concrete walls would be one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to add some steel framework on portions of the inside of the exterior walls, maybe the corridor walls too, stiffen the building that way. And then the third way to do it is kind of a newer way, but it involves putting carbon fiber mesh on a lot of the concrete, and it adds a tensile component to the walls, which are normally really good in compression, but not as good in, sorry, I'm getting kind of nerdy here, not as good in tension. So yeah, there are a number of ways it can be done. We do not have a structural consultant on the team yet, but should the project move forward, that would certainly be the first area to really study in detail and understand which one of those approaches is the best fit for the building. In terms of the third floor, it's likely that the building can support significant added weight because of the size and the reinforcement of the columns as they stand right now. But again, that would need quite a bit of analysis to really design the upper floor. But we believe that it's pretty compatible with the third floor. It might need some reinforcement of the columns, and it would definitely need reinforcement of the lateral system. But it seems like a pretty realistic possibility from a structural standpoint.
Great. I love the windows. Don't get me wrong about the windows. I like lots, especially with the view to the north and all the things that are going on in that direction with the park and such. So really like that. Just concerned that the building is an older building, but I think in the past even we had engineers quickly look at it, and say that there was considerable strength in the annex building now. Yeah. So
Yeah, and I think that was likely one of the, perhaps the main reason why this building was recommended to be retained and not demolished, sort of because of that, because of its bones. Its bones are pretty robust and good, as we understand it.
Chris, you've got professional experience in your history of projects. I'm curious how this kind of hits you.
Well, I was just gonna say, I really appreciate what you put together here, and I really appreciate the fact that I toured the building recently, so I could compare what I saw versus what you presented. And I do like the options. I have my own opinions. I am missing one thing though, and this is more of a question. Seeing on the back of that building is the forefront of our park. It felt like it's still the back of a building. And I kind of see something that looked like more two front entrances, one for the street side or the curb side, and then the other side is for the park, because we're using that building as a transition from the parking lot into the park. So that all of your walkthrough through that staircase going down and going out into the park, that's more like the front entrance for the people that are in the park. And there wasn't even anything as much of even an extended patio going out. So just some forethought about that. And I didn't know if there was a reason you left it out, or if it wasn't on the the package.
Just one point of clarification, the park will have a separate parking lot off the side. That'll be the main parking lot for the park
Correct.
with the,
But you still want to invite it.
but yeah, I agree with you.
We're making that center of that building all public access.
I think,
with-
I agree with you. I think it's very inviting and I think it should lead and.
And it looked great from
I
the
agree with
parking
you.
lot side. I just was wondering, the backside still looked like the backside of a building. I was just wondering why that lower floor wasn't extended out into that grassy area a little bit more, whether it was covered stone or
Part of
whether,
it we
or even
explore,
a covered porch
it
or.
falls off fast.
Yeah.
It does, yeah, slow. You have a little bit in there, and yeah, I think you could kind of create something on that high option. They have a deck.
Yeah, I saw that.
protruding out there.
No, it was really good. I'm not critiquing it. I thought maybe that would be presented too.
Yeah, Sean, you want to react?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, please don't be shy about critiquing any of this. We won't be offended. But I actually agree with you. I think that using the building as a connection between what's to the north of it and the south is absolutely strikes me as the right move. And I think, perhaps it is another covered entrance. I think some degree of patio would be nice, some big doors that open up. It was mentioned that the grade starts to drop off pretty quick. And it actually becomes sort of the park project pretty quick, the one that's about to start construction. The boundary of the building site is pretty close to the building, but I totally agree that there's opportunity, and that should happen if the project goes forward.
And one last thing is, the part that I liked was, or the part of a building that I like on a new construction project for a city building, is that you have convertible space. So where you have those large spaces down, and you gave examples of whether they were art rooms or yoga rooms or city council chambers or dining rooms, that space be movable and changed. Does that, but I didn't see a lot of storage areas in the, I guess, the artwork that you provided. Is that planned for?
Yeah.
Walls for storage areas for putting the council chambers up when we bring a big auditorium in, or putting the chairs up when council chamber comes in, or whatever the uses end up being for it?
Well, in terms of storage, I'll start with that. I should point out that the south half of the lower level of the building doesn't have any opportunities for natural light, really. Well, that's not true, but as it is right now, it's buried in the earth and it doesn't have any natural light. So that's a good candidate for a series of storage rooms, along the south side of the lower level. I think that once the program for the building is a little bit more well-defined, and we know sort of the appropriate ratio of storage for what's actually going to be happening in the building, like to mention one of your examples, once we know how many chairs are going to need to be put away, I think we'd probably start carving away at some of those orange areas, and making them storage that makes sense relative to where they're located, relative to the other space in the building. And on the topic of flexibility, I mean, I would say the building's very much in a flexible state right now, just because we don't know exactly what's going to go in it. But our intent in showing all those different diagrams was that at least at this juncture, it is quite flexible in terms of what could go there in most ways. Whether or not you wanted, movable partitions to have the building be flexible on a sort of day-to-day, week-to-week basis, I think that's a possibility too. And again, that's sort of dependent on who the future occupants of the building are and what's going to go on there.
And do you have a recommendation on what would give us the most advantage standpoint from FTE space to public space, whether that would be in the medium or large building?
Well, I mean, the large gives you more space, obviously. Are you asking whether I think it's a better fit for one of those types of programs, like office or more public kind of space?
Just your opinion.
Well, in my experience working in community centers, if that's going to remain sort of part of the vision here, the rooms that I walked you guys through are really good sizes for a lot of community center type of stuff. I think in terms of office space, given the scale of a lot of the city's departments, as I understand them, the size of those rooms might be a little bit on the small side. If you wanted to fit a whole department in one contiguous area, that might be a little bit tight. But I think as I've gotten to know the building, I'm really pretty impressed by how flexible it is in a lot of ways, and it seems to work pretty well for a lot of different things. I should note that the ceiling height is on the order of 10 and a half to 11 feet. So there are some things that, like a basketball court has been discussed. That's not a good fit for the building. A lot of sort of extreme, fitness center-y kind of stuff might be a bit of a stretch, but I think it works really well for both an office or a public use kind of scenario, frankly.
I appreciate it. I'll save my opinions for our retreat. I like this.
Further questions or discussion or hints towards opinions for the retreat?
I'll add something real quick,
Yeah.
if I may. And Sean touched on this, pretty well, the future occupant comment that he made. I think, we entered into this endeavor to see, is that building feasible? What can you feasibly put in there? Is it structurally sound? What are the different options? We spent a lot of time talking about Parks and Rec, obviously. I think at the last work session, we touched on potentially some city offices. One thing we haven't talked about, but maybe is another viable option, is library and their services, joining up with Parks and Rec and making that a true community center that provides services and programs for all ages from 0 to 100 plus.
You're saying put the library in here?
Yeah, and I think that only works if there's a third floor added, right? There's not enough space to do that on 2 floors, but that would then help alleviate some of the space needs that the library has, programming space concerns that they have, integrate that into the park as well with Parks and Recreation, free up the existing library space, which is larger than City Hall. So there could be a lot of other sort of moving pieces to this puzzle, depending on.
And I'll let you keep going, but my kind of theme for this urban renewal retreat is no sacred cows, right? Like let's put it all on the table and move the pieces around and figure out what.
Yeah, I think, my concern.
Right, whatever. Yeah. Maybe this is the library.
Yeah. You can move back to City Hall. Go
Yeah,
back in time. I think my concern is just making sure that we don't repeat some of our past, I don't want to call them mistakes, but issues with constructing new buildings that don't meet the size that we actually need. I don't want to move into a new Parks and Recreation facility and immediately be at capacity like we were with the library once it was constructed, the police department when that was constructed. And so trying to spend some more time thinking about, okay, if we move forward with the large option, what could actually be there? How do you how do I make the dollars work to present you an option that is feasible? And so there's some of that happening behind the scenes too, but the takeaway being, there's a lot of options with the 2 floors that are there, but there's also a lot more options that come along with that 3rd floor, and we can start weighing some of those possibilities as well, as far as who and what services would utilize the building, as well as funding that added cost of constructing the 3rd floor.
Yeah, done.
So I had a couple days to think about this library option since I became aware of it, and I like it for a number of reasons. One is the library is located in an awkward part of town right now in terms of kids walking. It's noisy. But as I now looked at these last renditions from the perspective of what if a library were co-located in that, we have that deck looking over the park. It's like, oh my gosh, what a wonderful place to go sit, relax, sit out, and there's no space like that in our current library. You have the ready access for the sound, which we can't even drop kids off in our current library. So they have to walk across the street. So I like that. I don't know how the finances will play out. I don't know. There's one other point too. The library wants more space because they do programs besides books. Well, having this program space that could be utilized by more than one department really starts to appeal to my financial school discipline part, to make sure those spaces are used all the time, regardless of which department and so forth. So I like this.
I promise I'm going to Kathleen, just to piggyback on that, is the one thing from the conversation with Rochelle, I got a little bit more excited about this project is it becomes part of the solution to the childcare desert, right? Out here in Sandy, as far as offering programs for children K through 12, an opportunity in those hours between the release of school and kind of those traditional off of work hours of folks returning home.
Or
So,
drop your kid off to a program and
Yeah.
go sit in the library.
well, that's what I mean. The library works very
Combination of
well
just-
into that whole.
Right.
Yeah, Kathleen.
Oh, thanks. It's always hard when you guys throw something just totally out of left field when I get up here. And I'm trying not to like go, what the hell, or frankly. Okay, so just coming from that, putting the library in here is kind of WTH.
Not a serious proposal, just.
Well, I know,
Yeah,
but I'm
yeah.
just like, somebody should have just pulled me aside before the meeting so that I had a little 5 minutes to kind of think, oh, okay.
Mhm.
Because part of my feeling is like, we have a library district. And that is supposed, is supposed, we're already paying, the city residents are already paying for the library that everybody in the district uses. And so, to say that now we're going to throw that away or consider this. And first of all, that's why I like a few minutes to just kind of think about things, but the whole idea of all the programming stuff that the library does is very important. And a lot of it, I think, is stuff that should be happening in the community center. It doesn't have to happen in the library. And so I think that this community center provides those opportunities for those badly needed resources. Moving the whole library into here is, I was just starting to look up what's the existing square feet of the library total. 11,900.
Ding ding.
So it's one floor.
It's more than one floor.
Yeah, it's 1 floor.
One floor.
Oh, sorry. It would represent 1 floor of the annex.
Okay, no, I'm just saying, what is the existing building? Yeah.
So we screwed this up. I want to acknowledge that when you started saying, Kathleen, somebody should have pulled you to the side before, you were spot on, okay?
Because I'm the liaison to the library.
Like,
So-
I totally hear what you're saying there. But let's table, if you would let us, the library conversation until like those further conversations, because that wasn't even anything I was expecting here tonight either, right? Like that is.
Somebody was expecting because Sarah came. So,
Well,
yeah, it's obviously been discussed,
remember,
yeah.
remember on our city council meeting, we have her on the consent agenda as well for that board liaison, which she has her tradition of showing up to those, right? But this is not the point of this work session, and we screwed it up, not you. But let's kind of focus on the building more than the contents of what's going to go in there at this point, because that really is a later meeting.
I think it's
All right.
the idea
Yeah.
that there's so many potentials and all of them have various pros and cons.
Well, let me get back to my original
Yeah,
comments, and
yeah.
that was, things like, remember when we, at the last, chamber, Clackamas County dinner we had in that room
Yes.
it was concrete and it had wood paneling and wood thing, and it was so loud. And so I know that those soaring spaces, architects just love to design those. They look, with the huge windows that go, 2-3 stories, whatever, they look, stunning. Functionally, though, the noise and the other things, that come about from that are problematic. And especially when we don't have a lot of money to throw around to, design everything for soundproofing and all that. So I'm a little concerned about that. And also just the fact that it seems like there is a whole lot of open space where it's open to above and open to below. And so, again, soaring spaces looks great, very impressive, but also loss of square foot space that, and then just going to the kind of the usability of those spaces that you do have on the, and I'm just looking at the median option, but on the main design there, the main floor, you've got those office spaces, but they all open up into the program spaces. And then you got this big, huge open area. And so just, if those are office spaces, it's kind of odd to have, that they have to kind of go into the program space to get in and out of the offices and all that. There's just a little bit of a utilization of, I want office spaces to kind of have a nice way to be able to get in and get out. My experience with community centers is it's nice to have the front desk folks kind of linked, just where I'd want Chelsea to weigh in, but have to have the front desk folks linked to, the back room area that's kind of probably got more open office space, kiosk, we call it desks and stuff. And then you have some private offices off of that are accessible to, again, to the more common area for those staff people. Just having a little bit of a rethink on some of that layout. And it's, those are the things. And then having that, I like the idea of the deck that's in the third option. I like the idea of having like the, dining area / something that could become a dining area / with a kitchen, because for renting out. And then when you have the deck off of that, then people can kind of go mingle out on the deck and come inside, and it's kind of a nice amenity there. So that's just a thought. And then I echo what Chris and others have said about having those spaces then linked to the outside park and making that a little bit more intentional about how that looks and links up to the park. So that's just the design things. And then I'll just say that I just think, for me, kind of form follows function. And so what is the function of these buildings? And, what are the programs that we want to have? What does that require for staffing, for space needs, for, light? I don't know all the things, but, all the what are the functions, and then what do those functions require in the way of design ideas? And that's, I think, something that we probably need to kind of work on a little bit more, hopefully between now and maybe, I don't know if we'll get that before the urban renewal or whatever, but that's, I think, the whole idea where we're talking about this building, but we're talking library, city hall stuff, community center stuff.
I think that
It's
to me,
Yeah.
that becomes like the next stage. Like for me, stage one was making sure that we had a building that was usable. And now it's like, all right, well, now we can have a really pretty building. But before we get too excited, like, does that building actually give us that functional demand that our community needs, right? And that's kind of the next debate that we all need to figure out what goes in there. To Kathleen's point though, I think unintentionally kind of teasing the last really cool capital project that was part of, man, that building looks beautiful. But the meeting space, the acoustics is awful, right? So sometimes when we're looking at some of these pretty pictures, we do need to do a little bit more of that investigative research. Do the acoustics work? A lot of windows. I talked to
former principal that's been in that building, working out of there before, talking about the heat, you know, in some of the parts of that building can get a little excessive depending on what the sun conditions are. So some of those just day-to-day kind of livability things, I think we'll need to research and be thoughtful about as we go forward as well. Other comments or questions?
I have a bunch of them.
Yeah.
We're rapidly getting to the end, and some of them relate to what Kathleen was talking about, in that I see a lot of options for different kinds of uses in this building, and it seems like we are moving very strongly towards office spaces. And I saw options for kitchens and those kind of things. So do you envision seeing us talk about that at this next December 2 meeting? Is that where I bring those kinds of ideas?
Yes.
I hear a lot of details from Kathleen. I hear a lot of generalities from Chris, and I have a number of them reactions, some really positive. I love some of the designs, but there's a lot of conversations for me in terms of how this is purposed. So
That's exactly what that meeting's for. Yeah.
So another situation that I see here is this looks an awful lot like an industrial building trying to be moved to a purposeful building. And I gotta say, I'm really tired of these square buildings that have low amounts of character. I appreciate the sandy style blue on the outside, kind of like what we did with the new high school. Some of that works pretty well. Some of that, I really need to look at it in a different format, because some of that, I don't know. So we can talk about that as well. Is that a later on conversation?
I think that becomes more of a later on. Like I'd like to think that your vote for moving ahead with this project isn't going to hinge on some of the look, what color brick we use, right? Like,
We're jumping about detail.
right, like
very
to me, it's is this building a functional building for what our community needs? Can we afford to move forward with that building? Is there a vast agreement that we should continue forward in that? And then when we move forward, it becomes what goes in there. And if we're like, okay, what goes in there's now we're really cooking, now we can start having those what color the brick conversations are, right? I just don't think we're there in that process. Yeah.
But again, some of those things like the square columns and that kind of stuff, maybe those things can be modified, maybe they can't be. So earlier on, look at those things is worth some value and maybe not as much as the color of the bricks at the very end. Yeah. Other things that I'm thinking about here is it appears as if we have completely lost the gym. Yeah, I'd like to have a conversation about that. Why? I know that some of the heights of the ceilings and stuff really prevent us from having a decent gym, but that was one of those bigger pieces that I heard the community, I heard council talk about. And so it seems as if we dropped that off the list without a whole lot of conversation with the entire council. So is there an opportunity to talk about that, or are we past that?
Well, hold on. Are you talking about the current gym and refurbishing the gym that's in current existence?
I thought it was gone.
Well, that is, okay, that's what I was wanting to make sure that we
That's
were,
gone, I
we were
thought.
seeing that same picture. Yeah,
The
so,
pool,
so what you're talking
gym.
about would be the creation of a new gym as part of this
Yeah,
project, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So is there a chance to have a conversation about that? without-
If that would have to come up in programming, which would obviously dictate a lot of kind of the structure of the building, but I don't think that particular building as is sets up for a gym today. That would have to probably be some sort, we'd have to come up with like some sort of pole barn type.
Yeah, something that maybe a detached or something.
Sure, but I mean, I don't think there's any heck knows, right? Yeah.
I think it's really important to go back to where we started. We have these needs, we have it in the building, and we ask these guys, what could we do? Open our minds. And don't, I mean, it's all, everything that you saw is just one zillion options that could be.
Well, I'm really excited about some of the plans. Some of them you think about, but I really love the idea of having something that we can open up to the community and use for things that are community and maybe even staff. Sounds like staff has got a lot of potential places for
At
this.
this stage, it's good that you have things in there you don't like, because that's what it was designed to promote.
I mean, we intentionally have not had programming conversation. I mean, sure, there's little like maybe the library or maybe this, but we have not spent any time of any significance. And as you know, being in a couple of these is of talking programming. It's all been, does this facility work, and then tackling that at a later point. So.
Well, I'm really jazzed about the potential of what we could do here and some of the different alternatives. Sounds like we're gonna do a lot of talking on the second.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Richard, and then you want to pitch in?
No, I mean, as I sit and kind of think about it, the question is, so on the second, are we gonna talk programming? Because I kind of feel like this is putting the cart before the horse. Just.
Do you want to take us through the second?
Sure, so let's-
Miss anything?
Let me take you through the second and then let's revisit the second and make sure that the second is the day
Okay.
that we're all in agreement with, because I think there might have been a scheduling conflict.
Okay.
But at this urban renewal retreat that we're dubbing it, you know, the quick and dirty of that is you've seen some conceptual ideas, some feasibility things. 2 weeks ago, you had a presentation from me about how much bonding capacity there was in the urban renewal district. I think now we really need to hear from the urban renewal board on, are we jazzed? Are we moving forward with this project or some variation of this project? Or are we thinking this isn't really a feasible option? We don't have the appetite to spend that much money out of urban renewal on one specific project and looking at other options and other endeavors within the urban renewal district. Obviously, this is a very spendy project, right? Or series of projects, anywhere from 7.5, I think, was the lowest cost estimate on there, up to 19.3 million. So a wide range depending on what option we go with. And so really identifying, is this the basket we want to put all of our renewal eggs in? And does it meet the needs of our community for now and the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Or is there a different approach? But because this is the highest dollar sort of ask or project in the district, staff needs to also understand, are we moving forward with this so we can prioritize and plan what other options are for renewal going forward? If this option is a no, then there's a whole different conversation to be had with the urban renewal board about all the other options and items that are discussed in the plan, from property acquisition, which the mayor already talked about a little bit earlier, to economic incentives, to redevelopment opportunities, to 4 or 5 other things that are pointed out within the plan that we can spend money on. But really, from staff's perspective, this is that big tipping point of where the ship is going to go. Is it going to go towards a community center, recreation center, parks and rec department, programming space, or is it going to other urban renewal activities and over the next 5 or 10 years?
I guess that's some of my hang up is like there's so many. What is the plan with this place? Like, what programs do you envision? Because that is the sticking point, right? If I don't know what's going to go in there, my natural reaction is right, without a plan. But it kind of feels like we're going to make a decision without a plan.
So let me try, because obviously the urban renewal boards has looked at different opportunities and plans in the past, right? And I think where some of those have hit its dead end is just the fiscal restraints and how some of us board members looked at that budget and what we could and couldn't do. And if you remember in some of those processes, there were like pivots on, let's just go a completely different direction, right? And I think that there were a handful of people that were looking and going, it doesn't matter what goes in this, it has not met what we can afford. And what at least I'm attempting to answer in phase 1 of this is, are we as an urban renewal board all feeling like we can, if we get what we individually kind of want out of that building, can we swallow these prices? And if we can, then let's go into that. Then the next stage of that meeting is, let's have a robust debate about and conversation about what goes into that facility, all in that meeting. But if then it becomes, no, like there's just a group that say, I don't care what you guys want, because there may be, right? I don't care what goes into that building, we cannot afford it. Well, if that's the opinion we get in that meeting, that takes us off on a completely different path. Okay, this building isn't getting any younger. We're about to go through and do some demolition of all the other properties. Where does this land in that, right? So that's kind of where I view it is, does this meet our fiscal test? If If it does, then let's have that conversation. If it doesn't, let's not have, let's skip this conversation. Let's go towards what we do with that facility.
I mean, yes and no, but
Yeah.
then there's also the word cost recovery was thrown out too.
Mhm.
And without knowing what the plan is, how do I know what cost recovery even looks like? Right? Because that plays into the long-term game. Like, I understand the short, but the long game.
But this won't be a decision. This is,
I get that.
this is just a checkpoint, right? For a bigger decision. So lots of work would have to go into that real decision.
Yeah, but a lot of money is gonna keep going into this
That's-
design and looking at it if it's,
But we're gonna
if
spend the
we
money.
don't have a business plan somewhat behind it.
But Rich, we are going to have, if we decide that fiscally, this is something we could potentially afford, then we're gonna get into that conversation. I think we're gonna learn really quick and open dialogue. Are we all on the same page? Or are we really not getting along? And if we are really on the same page, I think as a group, we're probably gonna wanna keep investing in the project. And if we're feeling pretty crummy about the conversation, we're probably gonna wanna put it on hold.
I look forward to hearing about it, but that's
I get it.
that's just kind of where I'm set. It's kind of like you're asking a lot. It is a lot of money with really a bunch of open space with no plan behind it. And that's my, I'm just telling you from my
Yeah.
point of view, that's my hang up.
I think the other thing I would add to, we have an existing community center that's about 12,000 square
Nope,
feet,
it's,
9,000 square feet.
9,000 square feet.
Uh,
Spreadsheet up.
So, obviously that, all of those services would be moving to this building in this Parks and Recreation scenario. There are a ton of programs and things that a typical Parks and Rec department or community center would offer, day camps, drop in for non-school days and things like that, that we aren't doing because we don't have the space now. So there's some easy programmatic things that just right off the top, we start running those programs. That's where cost recovery comes in. It's going to cover all the FTE costs associated with those programs. So I don't want to get into a whole rabbit hole of programs, but I think there's some really easy programmatic things that our Parks and Rec team would be able to implement the second they had more space. They just are constrained by the space they have. There's room for other programming opportunities, and there's, some more community engagement needs to happen to see what are we currently offering that isn't being taken at a high rate, what are we not offering that community members want to see. So there is some, added work that needs to be done for sure, but I don't think there's a question in at least our mind initially that we could program the 20,000 square feet of usable space within 25,000 square foot facility. I'm picking 5,000 as like the circulation area and mechanical room. Maybe it's 18,000 square feet, but the point being, there's some really easy wins that we would be able to implement right away from a programmatic standpoint.
Sean says you should go into architecture, says you're spot on, Tyler. So,
Hey.
way to go.
Thanks, Sean.
I was thumbs upping the 5,000 square feet for circulation and restrooms and all that stuff. I think that's about right. I think you'd have about 20,000 square foot of usable space in the 2-story scenario.
Definitely.
So I think what's the process wise that works with me is that when we talk about these buildings like City Hall, and the idea of moving City Hall to somewhere else or incorporating it somewhere else, what would happen to this building? And this is where our sandy net is, that we can't move it. And so what would happen? And so what are the options? What are the needs that we have here in City Hall? There's HVAC issues, there's space issues. And so, go with that facilities master plan, we've done kind of looking at that. What are the options? Like if we move the city council's chambers here, this is 865 square feet. And, with some additional mud funding to fix the HVAC and all that, does that meet your need? So just looking at what the options are, for the library, that we built that in 2012, so it's not even 10 years old. And so, what are the options for, adding another story, or what is the Clackamas, what is the Clackamas County interested in helping us with to solve those? What are the different options? And same with the community center. So the library is 11,500 square feet. And so again, when you're talking about 20,000 square feet and our current, community center is only 9,000 and the library is 11.5. So that right there, you already got no more room for your community center if you put the library in there. So just looking at each of these needs and then what are the options for fulfilling those needs? That's kind of where I come from. What are what are the program needs and what are the space needs for that and things like that. That's kind of really, I think, would help us if we could kind of identify each of those for each of these different needs, departments or whatever, and how that relates to this building and other options. That from a process standpoint would help, I think, all of us figure out kind of what our decision space is and where you get that overlap of possibility.
Sure. Cool. What will be helpful for us is also knowing how much money people are willing to spend, because we've done this like chicken and egg dance for several years, as many of you know. And so if that's not a viable option, the bunker building, we kind of need to know that as staff before we continue to make plans of what departments can go where, right? So totally, here and don't disagree with that approach at all. But if there's no money to spend on the project, then that also sort of changes the direction that we're going to go as far as looking at other options for more space in the existing buildings that we do have.
All right, well, thank you, Rochelle, and to your team, Tyler, everyone. There's been a lot of work that's gone into this. Sean, great presentation. It's been great working with you over the last several months, and sure we'll have more conversations as we move ahead. And obviously, we're looking ahead to a very fun and robust conversation here in a couple of weeks. With that, I'm going to call the work session to an end, and we'll look to adjourn here in 5 minutes. To re-adjourn. Reconvene at 7:10 here in 5 minutes. Thanks, guys. I'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. Please join me for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome everyone. I'll start with a quick review of tonight's agenda. I will call for any proposed changes to tonight's agenda. We'll then get into public comment. Jeff, still nobody's signed up?
No, Mayor.
All right. We'll then move ahead to the consent agenda, which has our city council meeting minutes from the November 6th meeting, as well as the appointment of Library District Advisory Committee representative, Planning Commission appointments, and the Business Oregon funding for Alder Creek Water Treatment Plant improvements and assessment. In our presentations, we have our Mount Hood Community College team here to present to us. And then under new business, we will go to a public hearing on the temporary extension of the moratorium on new wastewater connections resolution. We'll round off our evening with a report from our city manager and our committee and council reports. Jeff, with that, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilor Meek.
Present.
Councilor Smallwood.
Here.
Councilor Sheldon. Here. Councilor Walker.
Here.
Councilor Exner.
Here.
Councilor Hokinson.
Here.
Mayor Pulliam.
Here. Are there any proposed changes to tonight's agenda? Hearing none, I'll move ahead to the consent agenda. Unless there's discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's a motion by Councilor Sheldon and a second by Councilor Exner to adopt the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. No, nays? It passes. Just want to take a moment and thank our Planning Commission appointments of Jerry Crosby for his continued leadership on our commission, which has been an incredibly big deal with some of the new faces that we have, as well as Christina Ramsayer, who has joined us, I think, for the last, 6 months? 6 months to a year. She's one of our newer commissioners.
Sounds about right.
Who's just been terrific and has shown up in person on several joint meetings that we've had. And it's been a lot of fun watching her kind of grow into the role. Also wanted to thank Erin Ferguson, who applied for a position. She's heavily connected into the Trimble development real estate here locally. It's her dad's business, and she's kind of, I think, in the succession plan for that, get more and more involved in our community. And I believe she's applied to be on our Economic Development Commission. Yeah, just puts through her application for that. So that should be great. With that, let's go ahead and move ahead to presentations. Welcome to our folks from Mount Hood Community College. Welcome, Lisa, Dr. Scary.
So as you know, we have members of Mount Hood Community College here this evening. I believe the last time Dr. Scary was here was when you were newly appointed and you came out. Don Hamlin was still on council, I think, at that time.
Wow.
Been a while.
So welcome back. Have your presentation pulled up. I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you so much. And thank you for this opportunity to come out tonight. Like I said, it's been a couple years. We did have a little excitement called COVID in between there, so, but glad to be back out. And for those of you who may not know, I'm happy to say that my mailing address is Sandy, so I don't live exactly in the
Great.
city, but I am a Sandy resident.
That's right,
so,
you're Colorado Road, but we got you Sandy Net now, didn't we? Yes. we
Almost,
did.
not
Oh,
quite yet,
almost.
but,
Okay.
yeah, so anyway, pleasure to be here tonight, and I'm joined by two of my board members, and I'd like to turn it over to them to introduce themselves.
Marie Tooney, I've been on the board 2.5 years. That's all.
What zone
What
do you
else you- Oh, I
represent?
represent Zone 2, thank you. Just
Hi.
this zone.
Hi, good evening. Andrew Spear. I'm the board chair and I represent Zone 3. And I did grow up in Sandy from 8 to 18. So I grew up down on the river on Marsh Road by the pumping station. So Sandy, and this was before there was a theater or Fred Meyer. So right, we were going into Gresham
There were
a
a
lot.
couple years that just went.
Yeah, so I miss not having a theater as a kid here, but yeah, excited to be here and it's kind of fun coming back to Sandy to present tonight, so thank you. And I represent Zone 3 and I live in Park Rose. So.
And with that said, then I'll say I've been in my home in Boring in the same home for 40 years. So I've been around for a long time.
And you've represented our zone for quite a while. How long have you been?
Well, on the Mount
Board.
Hood board, I've
Yeah.
only been on here for 2.5 years,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm on the Oregon Trail
Right.
School Board,
Right,
yeah,
For a long
Right.
time.
on my 3rd term,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. So I've been involved in the district a long time.
So kicking off our presentation, I always like to start off, how many of you have ever taken a class at Mount Hood? Take it.
I think yes.
I went for a full year.
Had a family member take a class at Mount Hood? Okay, and for those of you that haven't raised their hands, have you ever swam in our pool? There we go, there we go. See, generally, I can get everyone in the room, but no, really, it's our pleasure to be here. As you know, Mount Hood has served this region since 1966, back when it was just strawberries and cabbage fields, and we're happy to continue that tradition. A little bit about where we are today.
Worked when I told you it would, right? No, it's gonna.
There we go. Okay. So we are head count wise 3rd largest community college in Oregon. Something we're very proud of. And last year we were right around 18,500 students. We are also one of the largest employers in East County with over 1,000 employees. And up there with, as far as being some of the largest with like FedEx and Amazon, they're much larger, but we do have a significant imprint in that area. And many of our employees do live out in Sandy and surrounding areas. A couple of things that have been exciting. Earlier this year, there's an organization called Wallet Hub that looks at organizations, and this was specifically community colleges, and rank them as far as highest quality education at the most affordable cost. So this was about 658 community colleges across the United States. Mount Hood Community College came in at number 4. So something we're very proud of, especially because it's been a commitment of our board to try to keep tuition affordable and accessible to our community. So quite pleased with that. So a couple of highlights just about the college, if you may not know, right now we're sitting at about 40% students of color. This is actually added by the very large immigrant and refugee community that we serve both out in this direction and in Gresham. And that really aligns with our focus and the boards on equity and accessible outcomes for our students. We're student-centered, and for us, that means a heavy emphasis on career and technical education. Little fun fact you may not know, we serve about 6,000 apprentices every year. We work with 25 different training centers in this region, and some of our programs do run into other areas, into Portland and down towards Salem, but a significant apprenticeship program. About 31% of our students are in those career and technical ed programs. And I like to share that That rate may not sound high, but it is more than double our sister institutions in the Portland area. So we like to call ourselves the career college of this region. And then lastly, tied to that, we're very career focused. We were pleased to be one of the first 2 community colleges in the state to be approved to have an applied baccalaureate program, and ours is in cybersecurity. We have our junior class entering next year, and the first graduates will be spring of 2026. Quite excited about that. The other thing that we've been doing a lot of work on this year has been around the semiconductor work. And clearly, I know you guys have heard about all the CHIPS Act. We received 2 Future Ready Oregon grants to help support this, and we've been working with Microchip and onsemi. It's been overwhelming, both their support and the interest by students, both upskilling their workers, but also new students. And we actually, for the first time, our mechatronics program is at capacity. And we're trying to figure out how we might be able to expand that. A side note, I do know that our dean has been working with the folks at Sandy High School to also make those connections. So whether we can do some dual enrollment, or at least an easy transition into those programs for those students, something we're working on. Now, things like this don't just happen by chance. They take planning, they take intentionality, and they take focus, and they take direction from, or guidance and leadership by our board. And so I'd like to turn it over now to Andrew to talk, oh, excuse me, sorry. Marie, to talk a little bit about the strategic planning process that the board undertook recently.
So the strategic plan involved a robust community engagement process. We solicited feedback from community members, students, employees, partners, and stakeholders. And the goals of the process were to, number 1, create a transparent process. Number 2, to have a final product that was an expression of our values and who we are as a college. And last, to develop an actionable plan with specific goals to drive all other planning, including the annual budgets. The highly interactive and collaborative process provided many opportunities for input through interviews, focus groups, surveys, and a half day of charrette. The process collected honest and constructive feedback about issues and priorities related to Mount Hood. Wanting to make sure that we heard voices from the broad spectrum of our communities, surveys were offered in 7 different languages, and we held a focus group in Spanish and had translators available for all of those sessions. Community input came from focus groups with our school districts, elected officials, cities, Chamber of Commerce, businesses, and other entities like the Pacific Northwest Carpenters Institute, the Rosewood Initiative, and El Programa Hispano. These groups helped us by sharing our survey with their networks. Our new strategic plan addresses the needs of the changing student body and the district demographics, responds to industry trends, and supports employees so they can increase the rate of student success for all. And what we heard was, if you can imagine, we received a lot of great feedback and were able to organize it into themes. In general, students and staff feel safe and welcomed at Mount Hood Community College and feel that the college is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Students ranked academic programs, financial aid, and location as the college's top 3 strengths, while the availability of classes and technology were seen as the top 2 weaknesses. Keep in mind that this process took place during the pandemic, so things like internet access were top of mind for many. We also heard from community members. Was the college's relationship with K-12 school leaders, business leaders, and political leaders was somewhat weak. From all the data collected, 8 key opportunities were identified for the college. 1, the built environment does not offer many opportunities for social gathering and interaction, and coming out of COVID, people were wanting to connect. Decision-making is not always transparent, and our internal stakeholders want to understand how decisions further our goals. Number 3, it was sometimes hard to track student success, especially as it relates to better understanding and what helps students be successful, in particular, those students with basic needs insecurities. 4, many students are unaware of the services available to them to help them succeed, and the college needs to consistently get information out about these services. 5 pathways from K-12 to MHCC and beyond are not clearly spelled out, and the college should work to better inform parents, especially for our first generation college students. And number 6, our business partnerships vary in strength. Some are very strong, especially in our career and technical education programs, yet other businesses thought we could better identify and respond to industry needs. 7, the needs of highly diverse student body are not fully addressed, and the college should better leverage coordination between college departments and services and our community-based organizations. And lastly, community is not aware of what we have to offer, and we need to better share what we are doing. The community is interested in being invited to campus for events, and the community wants MHCC to show up as an active partner. So this feedback gives us clarity in how to improve.
Next, I'll be going over the plan. So what are we doing with this data to then execute changes across the college? All the data that we used to collect during the process was used in the development of the plan and centered on our goals around equity and inclusion. As you will see, the plan lives under the umbrella of our equity statement and is guided by our vision, mission, and values. And up on the slide is the mission, vision, mission, and values for you to review. And next, I'm just going to be going through given what we heard, what are the areas that we're going to seek to improve over time. So over the next 5 years, the college seeks to improve teaching and learning. That has aspects of specific objectives that include things like effective and inclusive teaching, improving assessment, and reducing overall course failure rate. Number 2, provide a full range of programs and services to help students reach their goals. Specific objectives include things like aligning programs with industry and community needs, assessing student needs, and designing programs and services based on those needs. Number 3, align the college's operations to address the diversity of communities we serve. Specific objectives look like using an equity lens in all decision-making, expanding our student basic needs support, and seeking sources of revenue to support student success. Number 4, provide facilities and technology to serve the needs of all students. Objectives include things like strengthening online learning, improving student and employee-facing electronic systems, including the website. And I always chuckle with the website because that's the biggest feedback we get is that the website's hard to navigate. Number 5, increase our visibility in the community and strengthen relationships with community partners. Specific objectives include things like authentically engaging with historically excluded and multilingual communities, expanding work-based learning, and partnering with local organizations to create a community-based hub to exchange and share resources. Next, I'll be sharing about what does accountability look like in regards to this plan. So 4 years from now, we don't expect that you'll think back to MHCC and we don't think that you'll know what we did to our website or how teaching is different or what systems we've changed. But we want you to feel as though the college is an integral part of this community and a good investment of public resources. To this end, the board has set indicators so that we can track our impact on the community and hold ourselves accountable. Specifically, by 2027, we expect to see improved student success for all students regarding race, age, gender, or income. Specifically, our certificate and degree completion rates will increase to 53%. Our retention rates will increase to 75%. And 45% of our students will complete at least 23 credits in their first year. Number 2, 80% of students will meet core learning outcomes for all students, regardless of race, age, gender, or income. Number 3, 70% of students will say MHCC is a good steward of taxpayer dollars. Number 4, 30% of our high school students from our districts will attend MHCC after graduation. Number 5, employee diversity will reflect our district diversity within 5 percentage points. Number 6, student diversity will exceed our district diversity by 5 percentage points. Because if we are successful in achieving our commitment to access and equity, our diverse communities will find the college as a place they can succeed. Next, I'll hand it back to Lisa to wrap us up.
So that was a real high level, real quick whirlwind tour of the process and kind of where we ended up. But more specifically, I think the difference this time was the board and and the college, right, set these real specific measurable outcomes, because our plan is then to take these and every year be telling you what we're doing, how we're doing. And right, because sometimes when you're trying new initiatives, you don't quite know what's going to work. And so that's what we want to do, is do this continuous improvement and assessment so that we can move the needle and have more students reach success. This I know is in your packets, but if you want to see more, we have both a QR code and a link to our strategic plan. Also an environmental scan, and this covers the entire district, but it's got some really rich data around everything from employment to demographics and so on that others have used actually in their own research as well. So that is the end of our presentation, but I did want to open it up in case there were any questions.
Questions?
Good. First of all, when you say East County, do you mean everything up to the boundary with Clackamas County? Can you mention demographics in your opening remarks?
So that is our district, which is 950 square miles that runs from 82nd Street in Portland up to Timberline Lodge.
Okay, so when you used East County, you're referring to the district, not just East.
Yes, sorry.
Multnomah.
Yes,
Okay,
that
I
was
just
my own
wanted to
slip. I
clarify. No,
apologize.
it's all right. I get a little sensitive.
No,
The others are more opportunities. Like you talk about students and things. Do we have SAM routes to the college today?
We do.
Are they utilized regularly?
I can't answer that.
Do we know how well it's?
I can tell you anecdotally, I was meeting with one of our new ABESL faculty today, and we were talking about Sandy, and because she was saying she's seeing more students come from this area,
Good.
And specifically a student that had to take that was taking the SAM bus, and of course they have to go down to Gresham Station and then station, and then take another bus over.
There's
to
a
college.
connection.
There's a connection point today. So I
Yeah.
wondered, anyway, I wonder if that's something we can look at to maybe loop the college in. Because when I had kids going there, there was no route.
Mhm.
There was, if they had a late class or anything else, they were just out of luck. Or we're sending them down to that not so part of
Well, and it's a
town to then transfer over.
And it's a perfect example if it's something that the rest of council really agrees on. It could be a council goal to have a direct route to.
Yeah, so something we could look at anyway. And also the co-branding opportunities and a number of things that we offer to see if we can on your website. Find out how to make co-brand between the two. Do you know, we had a pool here and it got shut down, sadness there, but one of the ideas was to create, to make your aquatics program more accessible to our citizens through our Rex program, plan classes. I don't know if any movement has been on that, but that's something that our community desperately needs. And we have the transportation to get them there. To have dedicated classes where we do the signups and provide the facilities and teachers and so forth. And are you open to stuff like that?
Yes, I don't know much about the scheduling of aquatics, but I do know that it's primarily a community asset. We have very few classes in there, and so I don't know if there's been conversations yet, but I could definitely be open, especially in. Right, there's another reason if there was a direct route that would make it
Right.
easier for people to get there.
Exactly. And similarly, other recs, we're looking at building out our Parks and Rec part, and I'd love to see some more co-branding and utilizing both facilities back and forth. As far as your technical training, have we thought about internships like with SandyNet, things like that to draw the new cybersecurity people that are coming out, juniors? That'd be great interns.
We haven't explored that, but I was thinking the same thing. I can partner with your guys' staff and faculty.
Cool. And last, we've talked about it years ago, not maybe with you, but the opportunities for maybe having a satellite facility out here sometime. maybe in our new district down the road.
I
or-
love it. I mean, I know that they've wanted to upgrade their current facility several times, and I would love to see that pass as well, but I'd love to get some sort of satellite programs out here for sure. It'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have been collaborating for many years, but have an exciting project with College Housing Northwest that's kind of popped up. Maybe tell us a little bit about that and how do we plug in if there's a local, maybe high school graduate or something that needs housing, how do they get plugged into a program like that?
Okay. So the project he's talking about, College Housing Northwest, is a nonprofit that is focused on affordable student housing. And they started kind of working with PSU and a little bit with us and PCC. And since COVID have really kind of focused more so on the community colleges, realizing the level of housing insecurity. So what they do is they identify either apartment buildings, or in the most recent case, you may remember the Pony Soldier on Division and Burnside. They've acquired that. And they're refurbishing it and turning it into studio units for students. And the caveat is they're focusing on students that are most financially fragile. So it's an application process. What we do is we just promote the opportunities.
Okay.
And students don't have to live or be going to Mount Hood. They can be going to any of the institutions in the area, but based on the location, the one on Pony Soldier will most likely be mostly Mount Hood students. And I think they're saying it's about 75 units. So we're excited about it because they're a nonprofit. 75% of the rooms will be low cost, no cost. And then the other 25% will be 50% of the market rate. So they're really trying to get that affordability.
I have a comment and then a question. My turn?
Yeah, please.
Comment is my daughter participated for a couple of years and really was a plus for her. She was one of those students that needed to have that reinforcement and that self-start before she moved on to Oregon, which is really tough for me to swallow since I'm an Oregon State person, and so is my son. So we deal with that in odd ways. But one of the things that happened at that time, and a few years afterwards, I got involved in some of the mentoring of kids to find a way to move from high school to colleges and such. And one of the things that seemed to come up quite a bit was that many of these children that are doing really well in school were taking time off to go down to Mount Hood and deal with classes that they could take that would help them with credits to move on to, Oregon State, Oregon, I guess they had to, and others of that sort. But one of the things that they was most difficult was kind of putting their schedules together between what your class schedules were and what the school availability was. Have you had a chance to look at those kind of concerns and being able to figure out a way to connect with our teachers to find out if there are ways that when a student needs to take an extra algebra, whatever class, they can find a way to get into those kind of things that the college provides? Because that was really important for them at times.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you because I'm not sure what our deans are doing on those conversations. I know
Okay.
that there is interest in us trying to figure out how we can be as accessible and try to figure out ways to make the schedule that it works for as many folks as possible.
Sure.
So I'm sorry.
I recall that being one of those issues that seemed like the students were looking for a way to take advantage as much as possible of Mount Hood, and there were times when the scheduling just didn't work out for them. So
I will say post-COVID, one of the things,
Oh,
one of the silver linings that have come out of it is both our instructors are far more savvy now with online teaching. And our students are taking the classes. And so I think we're about 40% of our classes are online,
great.
which makes it much more easy for folks that can't make that trip in. Then we're still finding there's people who want that in-person experience. So trying to figure out if we can offer enough of a schedule to meet that.
Okay, thank you.
Well, thanks so much for coming in. Oh, did you? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
So first I have a thank you. I have a 21-year-old daughter who graduated in 2020 from Sandy High School. but she went to Mount Hood her last 2 years for that combined school program. And she graduated with an associate's degree when she graduated high school. And then she went on to graduate Southern Oregon University last year after only 2 years, the same
Wow.
reason. My comment is when she got into that program in 2018, it was very small, and she had tough competition. She was lucky and fortunate to get in. I would love to see that program expanded. And I don't know if it has in the last 5 years or where it's at today, but it was a benefit to me and my family to save the cost of college tuition for her. And she now gives back by working for the district attorney's office in Medford. But it's all because of the education she received at Full Sandy High School and at Mount Community College through that joint partnership program that you held.
I don't know the numbers off the top of my head where we are, but I can attest to, I love that model. And I know we have different arrangements with every different district, but it's a great model. My daughter did something similar up in Washington, and not only for their personal growth, but yeah, the wise use of taxpayer money,
Oh, right.
right? Because you're only spending it once.
Well, thanks for coming in. You saved me and my family a lot of money too. I went for a year, and and I caught up from some of my goof off years in high school too. So that kind of helped me get out to university. And thank you to both of you for your service on the board,
Yes.
for representing our
Thank you.
area. I know you paid just a ton of money to do it, and you're thanked all the time for it, right? But thank you, really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Great
that
to
money
see you.
they save, they got a spot on their website that says give now.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't think it's well known in our community or front of house. I don't think most people know about what's there.
Let's move ahead to our new business. We have a public hearing on the temporary extension of the moratorium on wastewater connections. I will open this public hearing, resolution number 2023-34 at 7:42. I'm now calling on any abstentions from our hearing body. Hearing none, I will call for any conflicts of interest from the hearing body. Hearing none, I'll now go to the staff report. Welcome, Josh.
Good evening, Mayor and councilors. As you are all aware, the city has a temporary development moratorium in place relating to the wastewater treatment system issues that the city has been experiencing. That moratorium is currently scheduled to expire on December 20th of this year. And this resolution proposes an extension of up to 6 months to June 20th of next year, 2024. The reason for that is that, as you're also aware, the city is under a consent decree with EPA and DEQ relating to those same issues. And as part of that consent decree, the city performed a capacity evaluation to determine how much capacity is still available in the city's wastewater treatment system based on the work that's been done to address those issues. And we're still in the process of EPA and DEQ evaluating the report that came out of that evaluation and the back and forth negotiation that will have to be done to land on a new number for that capacity. Once we land on that new number, we plan to bring back a revised moratorium that would change the cap from the current 300 ERUs to whatever that new number is. But we don't know exactly when that will happen. And we do expect it will happen within the next 6 months though. So hopefully well before June 20th of next year, we'll come back with that number and we can do a new moratorium. But this is to extend the time period to allow that to play out.
Thank you. I'll now move ahead to the public testimony. Guidelines for those who wish to speak, please try to avoid repetition. If someone else has already expressed the same thoughts, it is sufficient to state that you agree with the statements of a previous speaker, even if that's all you say. If you have documents, maps, or letters that you wish to have considered by the hearing body, they must be formally placed in record of this proceeding. To do that either before or after you speak, email your materials to recorder@ci.sandy.or.us and staff will make sure your evidence is properly processed. To offer public testimony, for those joining us in person this evening, please raise your hand to indicate that you'd like to speak. If you're participating online, click the raise hand button and wait to be recognized. If you're participating via telephone, dial *9 to raise your hand and wait to be recognized. I will now call on each person when it's their time to speak. Each participant will receive up to 3 minutes to testify. The city recorder, Jeff, will let you know when you have 20 seconds remaining. Our council rules require each person state their name and address for the record. I will now call for any testimony on the proposed resolution.
Hey, Mayor, just take a look around the room for any raised hands, not seeing any. Take a look on Zoom. And Mayor, I don't see any raised hands.
All right. I will now call for the staff recap and recommendation.
Staff recommendation is to approve the resolution and extend the moratorium.
All right. I'll call for a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in discussion of closing the public hearing signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nays. I'll close the public hearing at 7:46. Now calling for discussion by the hearing body. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Go to the motion.
It's a moving target. But the news is looking better and better as we're trying to climb our ways out of this, and look forward to seeing what the results and feedback is from DEQ.
That's right up,
I have
Josh.
one question, clarifying question.
Yep.
Are we accepting any annexations under the moratorium?
Yes. The original moratorium did not allow for annexations. That changed, I guess, in moratorium 2.0.
The revision in June.
Yes.
Kelly is on the line if
Yeah, I saw
he wants to offer anything, but I believe Kelly, tell me if I'm wrong, but the revision in June did open that up, I believe.
Good evening, everybody. Yes, it did. I have been getting some inquiries about whether if annexations are proposed, if we would be willing to approve any. And at this point, I've just told people I'm not sure, just because with the unknowns of the capacity, I don't know what city council would feel on those. So that might be something we want to discuss in the future.
Yeah, I think it would be case by case and probably really would need a lot of front work between staff and the applicant. All right, is there a motion? Is there a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2023-34, extend the moratorium on development pursuant to ORS 197.505 to 197.540 based on limited sanitary sewer capacity.
There's a motion by Councilor Mayton. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilor Mayton has been seconded by Councilor Sheldon. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays. Motion carries.
Quick question. Jenny, do we have any idea when DEQ is going to respond to our stress results? Any update on that?
Jenny, can you come up?
Oh,
We do have their first round of responses. We received that within the 45-day window, and our teams are working through them, and we have a series of meetings scheduled. So we are working forward as quickly as we can.
timeframe, first of the year, end of the year, 2025?
No, I do think this will wrap up quickly, but we got something like 35 pages of comments, highly technical. So I am thinking very early January. Yeah, I do think this will wrap up relatively fast.
For reference though, we submitted how many thousands of pages?
3,500 and
So-
change.
35 pages of comments is not
Maybe spring. huh?
extraordinarily large, given the amount of information we provided to them.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Moving ahead to a report from our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. So I mentioned this earlier this evening.
Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it.
Need to confirm that December 2nd does work for this group. We also have an opportunity to move to the 9th, if that is a better option. I see that Councilor Smallwood is Doesn't look like
It looks like she had to leave.
Yeah.
What was her, but she provided you feedback. Did it work for her? What
I think
works
the
or doesn't
9th is
for her?
preferred at this point.
I'll offer that she is open on the 9th. She's not open on the 2nd. And I think that was part of the reason. we
Was there
wanted to-
anyone that the 9th didn't work for?
Based on some of the conversations I've had before the meeting, I think that should work for everyone. Please tell me if I'm wrong. So, Mayor, it sounds like the 9th.
Yeah,
Could-
I'll
could
miss
be
some
a-
of Lucy's volleyball tournament. That's fine. Yeah, it's cool.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, doing that.
Yeah.
I think we said,
Morning?
I think we said 10 a.m. We'll just do the same time.
Yeah, it was tentatively 10 to 2:30.
I'll tell Lucy I said that was cool. Let's keep that.
She's gonna watch
keep that
this
between us.
You all have an invite for a sneak peek at the lights in Mining Park for November 28th. So some staff will be here. I believe the Parks and Trail Advisory Board is also invited to that as well.
Okay.
And then some of the sponsors for the various lighting stations that have sponsored those will also be in attendance that night.
What time is that?
That's 6:30 on November 28th.
Bring our family or just trying to keep it tight?
If you want to bring some family. I will likely have a couple kids in tow, so. they're fun.
Is that, I'm sorry, was that the Christmas tree lighting also?
No, so
Not the
this
Christmas
is
tree lighting, just the Mining
sneak
Park
peek.
lighting.
Sneak peek.
6:30.
6:30.
Yep.
Yeah, so the Christmas tree lighting is next Friday though.
Is next Friday, December 1st. That will be immediately followed by lighting over at Mining Park. So police will be in attendance again to help control traffic while people are crossing the highway and coming right back down into the park to see those lights.
And right in the middle of the Pac-12 championship.
Correct.
What's the time for the Christmas tree lighting?
That's a great question. I don't know if it's 6 or 7.
I think it's 6.
I think it's 6.
Yeah, I
6.
think it is.
Thank you, Sarah.
That was the only thing that I saw.
Yep. We also have a joint meeting with the Ant Farm scheduled for December 18th. There's been a lot of work on the homelessness task force, working with Ant Farm and partnering with them for some services that they've been helping us with. And so getting them in front of you guys just to know what services are out there, what they're doing, how we're partnering with them. Having a joint meeting just to discuss the current status of houseless individuals and where we're at here in Sandy. Reminder that city offices are closed this Thursday and Friday for Thanksgiving. And some of you noticed the new map already. You're right, but we have a new map over there that is up to date with roads and development, some new boundaries. City property is also highlighted so we can kind of see where we own things in relation to other amenities in the community. So take in the glory of that. Thank you, Thomas, if you're watching this evening, for getting that printed today and getting hung up. And then last but certainly not least, I wanted to give a brief update on our library outreach vehicle. And Sarah can help fill in the gaps here if I have anything missing, but you'll likely recall that $150,000 was allocated during the budget process to acquire a library outreach vehicle. Sarah and one of her staff members just recently went to a conference in Pennsylvania, Hershey, Pennsylvania, and saw actually a couple of different vehicle options. The vehicle that we had originally intended to go with is no longer in production, and surprise, the other options are more expensive.
No.
So this is not a financial ask. I'm just keeping you updated in the process of where we're at with things.
Okay.
There is a pretty large gap between what was allocated and what the new cost is of a potential outreach vehicle, about $140,000 difference now. We're going to look at ways of partnering with the Friends of the Sandy Library for fundraising. They've been a huge asset in the past for computers and raised quite a bit of money several years ago in that endeavor. I'm sure they'll be likely.
Did you say 140,000 difference?
Yeah, so yeah, it basically doubled. So
Why is it Clackamas County, since we're not the library district, Clackamas County is the library district?
So
that.
this is why this is not a financial ask. This is just updating you of where we're at in the process. We're exploring partnerships with the Friends of the Sandy Library, partnerships with
So the city's
Clackamas County.
allocating 150,000 in seed money.
At this
point, it might just be seed money. But the intent here was to make sure that you all are aware that we have not just pocketed $150,000 of general fund revenue and not moving forward with a vehicle acquisition. We're looking at grant opportunities and other partnerships to fund that difference.
And you're meeting with the folks on the library next week, right? The
Correct,
28th.
the 28th. Yep. And depending on how that conversation goes, this will be another component of the
pivoting.
conversation.
I'm pivoting 150 grand. Kathleen.
But
Big sales.
a lot of bake sales.
Yeah.
But we're gonna continue to look for partnerships and other grant opportunities to fund that difference, as well as just flat out asking the county for some additional assistance for the large unincorporated area that falls into the Sandy and Hoodless.
We'll give
Hoodless
rides to
service
the
area.
courthouse twice a week.
They can read books and check out material on their way. So, yeah, I don't know, Sarah, if you want to add anything to that, or if that pretty much.
Exterior
summarizes.
shower, say that.
That's good. All right, that's all I have.
All right, thanks, Tyler. Don.
Any update on the Santa sign up and background checking process? Because that date's coming quick.
I will send out an email with an update tomorrow.
Very cool. And then just to note that our Chromebooks here are horribly out of date and are now security risk.
Here.
These.
Oh, no reason.
The last update was version 91 and it's like 118 now. And it won't update because it's end of life. So just an FYI, that's now a hackable tool for the city. There you go.
It's tough.
Thank you. You're welcome.
You know, we're in the month cheer, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, I realized because I went to the new version, you can click on the calendar, so the dates were popping up, and you click on the bottom, you see the full calendar like in Windows, and it doesn't come up. I was like, well, what version is this? But there you go. So,
All right. Sounds like
We have some technology needs in this room. We have those computers.
We
that
do.
list.
but that may be an actual security risk. So
Yeah.
Gotta be assessed. So.
All right. Cool.
I look forward to seeing some of that money spent on developing all this information and how we display ourselves and listen and that kind of thing. Because I was a little concerned about Mount Hood Community College people, that their voices were not very strong, and was worried that we didn't get good coverage. I don't know.
That's a very powerful microphone.
Is that right?
This one here, yeah.
I had troubles hearing her, not the other two, but the president.
Lori said she could hear him.
She could hear him? Okay, good. That goes back to the audience issues that we've talked about many times. One really positive thing, I was at Clackamas River Watershed Council last week, and they had established a watershed scholarship for Sandy High, which is a first for them. They spent a lot of energy and get a lot of money from PGE and other sources to do scholarships for some of the other high schools that are directly inside the Clackamas River watershed, and about $5,000 to help kids and hopefully for the next year, not this year, but the upcoming school year. So I'm really excited about that. Some of the kids that are involved and interested in those areas, that would be really good for them. Had the speed trailer, is that what we call it? The radar trailer, or whatever you want to call that, happened in front of my house here a couple weeks ago. Appreciate that. You know, it's very hard to speed when I'm right there within 5 inches of that trailer. It's really hard. I try, but I can't get it up about 20 miles an hour in that 5 feet. So it's interesting, the statistics that they've handed out from Officer Moody, and I appreciate that. I thought at first it looked really bad because it said 50% of the people that were scoped were speeding in the 3 days that it looked like. But the average speed turns out to be about 5 miles an hour over the speed limit. So it's not really as bad as I had anticipated it being. But the fast guy was 53 miles an hour. So
that's the one we all remember.
The stop sign is only about 200 feet from my house. So, you know, I'm thinking hopefully his brakes were good, because that's Highway 26 out there. So I appreciate that. I had a chance to talk with the chief a little bit about it, understood some more things, and I think it's really a good facility for us to be able to slow down people, because I did that, and kind of understand what was going on. So with that, that's it. Yeah.
Counselor, you've seen improvement on your large trucks as well, haven't you?
Yeah, good point. I haven't seen the large trucks for several months now, probably since midsummer.
Tell my dad to start driving down.
Please don't.
Yeah, I didn't think we did a whole lot, but it seems to have been slowed way down. So I appreciate that. And it's good. Right.
Kathleen.
I want to thank Chrissy and Jerry on the planning commission. I'm thrilled to see them on there. And also that I'm really appreciative that we have Bethany Schultz coming back as the new county library representative for us. She'll be great. I really enjoyed the Mount Hood College presentation. They have a really pretty good criminal justice program there, and I'm hopeful that we can do some recruiting of potential candidates for police officers from that program in the future. And then the other thing I'll just kind of say is that I don't want to say I'm losing sleep, but I'm trying not to get too off the rails about the whole idea about the density issues that we have as far as the code that we talked about with clear and objective. But, you know, our code is basically allowing us to have 28 units per acre, which is, you know, going from 14 to 28. There's just, you know, that's not anything we intended. That and it's in all, you know, it's doubling of all the different zone allocations that we have. I'm trying to figure out, because what I want to understand, because Carl, you made a good point about there's actually setbacks and this and that kind of come into play, but it doesn't, you know, but I still have no idea. Well, does that take it from 28 to 26
Right.
or 28 to 16 or what? And so, well, you know what, but we need to figure out what it does give us, and then what are the tools that we have to kind of get that back into control. And also just to kind of point out to the folks that are making these judgments about how that ends up, because I don't think it was their intent. I understand what their intent was, but I don't think it was their intent, because again, in medium density, we already allowed duplexes, and there was 14 units per acre allowed in medium. So that was always the case. I don't think it was their intent to say, you know what, we want you to shove 28 units per acre. So I'm just trying to figure out, I'd love some input from people as to how we can kind of address this in a way that, you know, is respectful. We all have a common need of high and medium density, a good balance of densities, but this is really something that it's just a huge loophole. Probably the biggest loophole after all the planning, after all the time I've been, you know, complaining about minimum lot sizes back in 15 years ago or more. All the loopholes that I've seen, this is the biggest loophole that I see that could really screw things up for our town. And because we have not sized our infrastructure for 28 units per acre, you know, and so for all those reasons, I don't know if it's 14 or 28 or something in between, but I think we better figure out what it is, because it's a pretty big issue. It's a
Can I
big
comment?
loophole. So I'm going to continue to be a squeaky wheel on that.
I just want to make a suggestion, if I could.
Yeah.
Schedule a coffee, me, Jerry, Kelly, and you. I'll bring my code book. We can look at it together. I can answer any question you have about our code today, and if it needs to change, because what you're talking about is for the duplexes, the state law versus our code. And what I think you're wanting is for us to change our code to prohibit what state law allows. And that may or may not be feasible, but we would need to sit down and educate you on what the law says versus what the code says, so that you can pick apart what you want to suggest, because I don't see any other way
You
you're
don't
gonna
need
get
to
what you're
educate
looking
me.
for.
I know what the state law is. I've quoted chapter and verse of the OARs that go behind the state laws, and I know what our code is. So I did my homework. I know what I'm talking about. And, you know, yeah, I'd love to sit down with you guys and just kind of, you know, figure out some different ways.
And I only asked
Definitely,
myself because I'm on the planning commission as liaison, so I would love to be a part of that. Plus, I was on it for 4.5 years.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with the code, and I'm familiar with the state law, so I'm confused about what you're looking for then, because it sounds like you want to change the code to prohibit what state law allows, and I don't know how to do that. And I would love to get your input on it, because if that's if you're trying to reduce the density in a single family residential zone, I don't know how you do that, given what the state law, Senate bill, I don't even remember the number of it, allows for the splitting of those duplexes, how that helps.
Okay, I'll send you
But
this
we
guy.
can do that off.
Yeah, yep.
offline.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
And I just want to say, I think the more collaboration between planning and council and staff and all that, I am all for those gatherings, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Conversations with some people that live off the new 362. Evidently, there's a lot, according to them, there's some speeding issues. So I was just kind of hoping, which I totally get. It's a nice wide open space and not a lot of traffic. And so, you know.
Is that not what Formula One was over the weekend?
I was young once too, so, anyways, for what that's worth. The second thing is there been any traction on that, employee volunteer recognition?
Yeah, Angie and I have started looking at what other cities offer, if they do offer a program. I think we're in the stage of trying to find that sweet spot of how many volunteer hours do you put in to get X from the city. So we're working on that in between recruitments and some other policy updates that we're trying to get taken care of, but it has not died.
Okay, cool. That's all I got. Thank you.
Great. Lori, looks like you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just real quick, don't forget the Tickle Trot for the Community Action Center Thursday morning at 0800. So bring your friends, bring your wallets, bring your running shoes. And I hope everybody has a great Thanksgiving. That's all I've got.
Thanks, Lori. Good seeing you. Chris.
No, I just was to say thank you for putting the winter on the website for everyone, even with a bad pick. and thanks for the presentations that we heard today. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, thanks. Great meeting tonight. I don't really have much of a report other than we got Winterfest coming up. Tickle Trot, hope you all go out there. Lucy thinks she's gonna run it this year. Olivia just wants to go to Fred Meyer's and get a donut with dad again, like they usually do. So I think that's might be what I do. Mackenzie's gonna run it, not me. With that, I'll go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Thanks, everybody.